We're going to be
Beautiful
so
weather
good
here.
at this.
I was just gonna roll with it, but now we have to start over again.
Oh, no, no. I thought, okay. Yeah, we can. Sorry. If we're recording this, I shouldn't point at you. You should just,
All right,
right.
take seven.
Hello, and welcome to the Practical Palette Podcast.
I'm Tara.
And I'm Mark. And we'll explore the world of fine art and representational painting through the lens of philosophy, art history, and our own art making practices. Today, Tara and I will be getting into what this podcast is about and why we're doing it. Hi, Tara. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Mark?
I'm not too bad. I did get out painting earlier this week, which was nice. So we actually had some warmer weather with the fall, a little bit of fall color. So it was
Yeah,
fun.
it's funny. I've found that I've fallen out of plein air practice quite a bit. I've been doing a lot of other things in the studio, and so I have a couple friends who really push me to get outside, which I appreciate because it's not always a priority that I'm making, but it's
Mhm.
always something that I enjoy when I come back to the studio. I'm just,
Yeah, it's a little bit like exercise. You're never excited to go do it, but after having done it, you're like, oh yeah, that was a good decision. I'm glad I did that, you know.
yeah,
And especially when you've got a crew to go with, the social aspect of it can be quite enjoyable.
I agree.
But what kind of stuff have you been up to in the studio? And
So I've been playing with several different mediums in the studio, many of which I enjoy how they inform each other.
Mhm,
I've done some printmaking lately. I've done ceramics, I've done glass, stained
mhm.
glass, and it's interesting to see how they inform each other as far as composition and mark and texture and all the things that sometimes as a pastelist, I miss out on the texture end of things
Mhm,
because everything is so flat.
mhm,
And in some of these other mediums, it's fun to be able to add that element of texture. So, be it
mhm.
oil painting or ceramics, and printmaking, obviously, the carving element of it is just, I just think it's fun. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I really wanted to do this podcast was to have an opportunity to explore more freely some of the ideas maybe that are perhaps more philosophical, not necessarily like we're not making each other studio assignments or anything, but some more mental assignments that will help inform studio practice. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So, for those not familiar with Tara's work, you should definitely go check it out. But it's interesting. There is such a through line. Like I could identify. I don't know much about stained glass, but I could identify a stained glass piece made by you because there is this design consistency across all those mediums. I mean, especially between the pastels and printmaking. Like there's such a unique quality that your work has. Um, yeah, I think that's a great way to start off. Why are we doing this? What what is this podcast?
yeah, so I approached you about this because I was looking for someone who was interested in kind of unpacking different concepts, be it philosophical concepts or technical concepts, even just learning, getting a book about pigments and having a conversation about where these pigments are found or what historically how they were used and things like that that will not necessarily wildly alter your studio practice, but just kind of inform your knowledge level of all of these things. It could certainly encompass art history. It can be guest speakers. It can be texts that we choose, just to encourage some deeper level thinking on subjects that we may not even make the time to do in our typical daily life.
Yeah, yeah. When you first came to me with the idea and put it in those terms, I got really excited about it because so much of what we can do as representational paintings can be craft oriented. It's very technical. I mean, especially for myself, I think I'm really focused on, how do you render light and form and all those things. And you kind of lose some of the capital A art piece with that, and there's less philosophical thinking involved, or how does this relate to art history, all those sorts of things that kind of get lost in the weeds sometimes. And so keeping those sorts of ideas top of mind moving forward, I think would be beneficial, just as almost as a thought experiment. Like, how is this going to influence our work, or just influence us as artists, as people?
Yeah,
And
and there's so much out there to know. I just
mhm,
think it's fascinating. I want to know everything about everything just because why
yeah,
not?
yeah.
You know?
It's a big sandbox that we can play in, and why not? You know. Um,
Absolutely.
so we should probably talk about who are we, Tara? Who are you?
Wow, that's deep. I am Tara Will. I was born in 1984. I won't like go back to childhood or anything. I graduated from Mount St. Mary's with a degree in philosophy and art, and I miss learning. If I could afford to be a lifelong college student where I just went to class and learned anything and everything, I just love it.
Mhm,
So to me, I think that once again, not to reiterate something that's already been said, but to unpack some ideas that are kind of fresh or things that exercising that muscle that I haven't really been using for kind of a deeper dive into some of these topics that we want to talk about. Because I was a philosophy major and my senior thesis was actually on the intentional fallacy. So, whether the intent of the author should influence the feelings or the how a viewer reads something, be
mhm,
it, you know, it could be a text or a painting or whatever, basically, since we have, forms of communication there.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so philosophy was a huge part of my education, and I missed that deep dive into thinking about some of these things. So,
Mhm,
yeah. So, Mama Four started
mhm,
plein air painting.
mhm,
Um, had a great time on that circuit, and with COVID just really slowed down. I kind of lost my lust for it, if I'm being honest. And so as a result, I've been in the studio quite a bit more. And, there's something really special about that space too. It's kind of
mhm.
um, your own little getaway.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to, I mean, you use the term unpack. Just in that arc from, let's say 2019 when you and I were painting on the plein air circuit together,
Mhm.
to, what you're doing since then, just from an art making standpoint, from philosophy. Like, there's so much that's changed in your work in some respects, and certainly how you approach it. And I think that'll be very fertile ground for us to talk about, like, what happened. I mean, not that we have to get too, deep in the weeds on it, but uh, it would be an interesting lens through which to discuss, again, philosophy, or any of these other things that we're going to get into.
Yeah. How about the history of Mark? I want to hear about that.
Oh, it's a tale as old as time, young Wisconsin buck. No, so I grew up in here in Wisconsin. I went to school for illustration and at the University of Wisconsin Stout, which is a small school in western Wisconsin. And I was doing that for a while until I started plein air painting, which at the time was just a kind of a hobby. Um, I thought maybe it would supplement my illustration work, or help with building that visual vocabulary. And so I just kind of stumbled into the fine art world via plein air painting. So I started doing the circuit. That's where you and I met. many years ago, and basically, started a studio practice from there. Started showing with a few galleries, stuff like that. And that more or less takes us up to today. I similarly have been cutting back on the plein air events for a number of reasons, and that's something I think we can definitely get into down the road.
I know
Um,
that is our next episode topic, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot to talk about there. We're going to talk about plein air life, plein air shows, plein air painting, just in general. What is it good for? Um, how do you do it? Materials, stuff like that. I think there'll be, yeah, lots to talk about. What else might we cover? I guess we did talk about that a little bit. We're going to have some guest artists on. We're going to talk about some art books, some philosophy books, some art history books, art history in general. What else we got?
I think that's the purpose of this podcast is to really open up some of our viewers, hopefully, or listeners. I guess
Mhm,
they're not viewers, are they? Um, Open their, proverbial clamshell to some ideas that perhaps they hadn't thought about either.
mhm,
I know we talked about, when we open up to these texts, some of the texts that we have are pretty dense
mhm,
text. And I think that it will be very informative for people to consider these things while they're working. And so, one of the texts that we actually are going to be discussing at some point, I don't know what number episode or anything, is that Elements of Color by Johanna Sitten, which I just
mhm,
adore. And that
mhm,
was the book that really stopped me from thinking of contrast strictly in terms of value and made me start to understand that contrast can be equally achieved, if not more, more strength to it with color. And
mhm,
so, I think being able to kind of unpack that special word, some of these ideas will hopefully help integrate some of these things into the studio practice of people who are listening. So
mhm.
hopefully you find it interesting as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, well, as much as this is an exercise for us, I think for the listeners to also engage with, I mean, we can make this like a book club if they want to read along with some of the texts. We can certainly announce those ahead of time. But um, yeah, for them to think about some of these concepts, these ideas on a deeper level, and yeah, I don't know how much of this will be huge game changers for us, but again, to just be considering being like a more thoughtful existence in the studio, I think will be beneficial, and it just makes it more interesting.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like when I'm excited in the studio, that's when the best work comes out. I don't know if you feel that way.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. I was telling a friend that we were doing this, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing it with Mark Anderson." Oh, I love that Mark Anderson. His work's amazing. And I said, I know, right? So, it's fun to hear your history and the illustration piece because I think it really informs the precision with which you paint.
mhm,
It's painterly, but it's also very precise and very methodical and very thoughtful in the process. And so it'll be fun to kind of have someone who, like me, is more impulse based, I'd
mhm,
say, and you a little more methodical and, more organized and thoughtful and maybe processing it slightly different. So some of these topics, we're going to have obviously some different takes on how they would apply to our work or if they would apply to our work or if they're
mhm.
valuable or not valuable. And the fun part about art is that everybody's allowed into that conversation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not exclusive to, viewers don't necessarily have to have an art background to view a painting and connect with it. And
Mhm.
so there's something really special about art in that way.
Yeah, part of me hopes we're not too open-minded with one another, that we're the conversation just becomes boring. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, you could also do that. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. No, we got to spar a little bit, Tara.
I know, we will spar. Sparring will happen. Well, it's funny because I think that that's an important component that humans in general are really lacking at the moment. The ability to respectfully disagree. You
Hmm.
know, I think that's something that's really important and missing in conversation. And so I'm not saying that we're going to be big opponents on everything that we
Hmm.
talk about either, but at the same time, it's nice to hear a different perspective and think, oh, it's like any information, you can absorb it or you can kind of let it go.
Hmm.
And so I think it will be nice to hear the variety of ideas too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's funny how dogmatic a lot of representational painting can end up, or painters can be. Uh, and I don't think either of us fall under that camp or that umbrella, but it'll be fun to talk about it, all of it. Yeah, like you said, from coming from very different perspectives and just gaining a greater appreciation for the breadth of not just representational painting, but art in general.
mhm.
I think will be great.
Well, Mark, I am really excited to talk about these topics with you and share with our listeners and viewers and really deep dive into some things that I would love to be thinking about. So, thank you for joining me on this endeavor.
No, thank you for inviting me. Again, I'm excited to dig into these ideas as well. Um, and our listeners hopefully will join us next time when we talk about plein air life.
Yeah, that'll be a fun topic. We have just a tiny bit of experience in that,
Just a
right?
little. Yeah, it's yeah. All right. Well, we will see you all next time. And
See you
until
next time,
then,
everybody.
all right, take care.
Happy painting.